Hello and welcome back to A Chapter a Day. Today is Tuesday, February the 20th. I believe sometime within February. I may have been saying January. I know I picked it up one time, but just in case I was saying January and February, I apologize. We are in February. And today's the 20th. And we have finished with the book of Genesis since yesterday when I read Genesis chapter 50. So, what I was going to do is just recap chapter 50 and then go on to another chapter. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to follow through with the Old Testament all the way through, then begin the new, or if I shall do an alternate reading of each of those sections. I am not quite sure. So that's why today what I thought I would do is just review the entire book of Genesis from chapters 1 through 50. Not in detail, just a quick review of what the whole book entailed. So starting with the beginning, which was chapter 1, God created the heavens and the earth and everything in it, and he said it was very good, and he rested the seventh day. Then we read about the old devil becoming a serpent, turning himself into a serpent to deceive Eve into picking and eating the fruit which God said they should not, and encouraging Adam to do the same. And then they were both discovered. Of course, God knew what they were doing. And they both tried to blame each other. Adam, Eve the serpent. The serpent was cursed to crawl on his belly. And they were both, I don't want to say thrown out, but yeah, they were not able to stay in the garden. They were exiled from the Garden of Eden and into the world now. They were able to, they began conceiving, having children. The first was Cain, and then the younger was Abel. And of course, Cain came out with all of the ravages of sin within him, that he was envious of his brother Abel because of the offering that both were giving to God. God received that of Abel's, but not of Cain's, because Cain was giving from the ground fruits, and Abel was giving of his livestock, which is what I believe God required as an offering. So Cain slew Abel, and then God put a curse on him. He thought that, it was never clearly stated what the curse was, but whatever it was, his punishment was too great for him, he said, and God, in his mercy, whatever he did to it, he said, he will still put a hand over Cain, that whoever slays him, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. But anyway, on he went, and he had children, and they had children themselves. They found wives, had children, on to all the generations. And then they gave you all the generations that came off of Adam, including Cain and Abel, Seth and Enoch, and all of their children, all the way down Lamech and Noah. And Adam died at the age of 930 years. That's a long time. Methuselah, which I believe was his grandson, his son, lived to be, let's see, I think it's 969 years old. So Noah was the one who continued on, because we heard of Noah preaching to the people to repent and to change their ways, while God authorized him to build an ark. He gave him all the blueprints for it. Noah did just what God said, and I believe it was for 3 years Noah preached to the people, and only 8 people were saved, which was all Noah's family. The flood came after the rains. It rained 40 days and 40 nights. Floods came, remained on the earth 150 days before the waters subsided. And then Noah and his family went out with, I forgot to mention, with the clean and unclean animals that God also told him to take into the ark with him. Noah's children, I guess, had the ravages of sin on them as well. So while Noah was drunken, of course Noah too, in a drunken stupor, lying naked wherever. And we are never sure what uncovered his father's nakedness was. One of his sons, Ham, was the one who did that, while the other two, Shem and Japheth, covered him and walked backward and did not see his nakedness. So Ham was the one who was cursed, and out of Ham came Canaan. Okay, after the flood and Noah, then we have God, of course, setting up the rainbow, which is the real meaning of a rainbow in the sky. God's promise not to destroy the earth by flood anymore. So now we are moving on, and we see now Abraham is coming into the picture. And Abraham and his father Terah and his nephew Lot, they all moved from a place called Ur. And when Terah died, God spoke to Abram and told him to go to the land of Canaan. And on their way, they had some encounters. I believe they went through Egypt. Sarah was fair to look upon. The Egyptian king maybe wanted to have her for wife, and God had to deal with the household, not well, of course, and he had to let Sarah go. And he also gave Abram, who was still Abram and Sarai at the time, gave him some riches, all of which he took with him. When they left, apparently he shared it with Lot, because now they both had so much flock and so much goods that they couldn't dwell in the same place. So Abram took Lot and said, hey, you know what, let's choose. You want to go left, I'll go right, vice versa. Lot chose to go and camp out close to Sodom, which turned out to be a very wicked place. Didn't know if he knew that when he went, but he stayed. And I believe there was some war with the king of Sodom, and he was captured at some time, and Abram heard of it, took the soldiers of his household and went to free Lot, which he did. Okay, moving right along, Lot was told by the angels that also visited Abram and told him that Sarai would be having a child sometime in the future, which both of them didn't believe because they were so old. But it was to come to pass sooner or later. But in the meantime, Lot is going to be visited by these angels who are going to tell him, get out of Sodom because God is going to burn it up. It is so wicked. And he was leaving. The only people who would go with him were his wife and his two daughters. They were married, but for some reason they still labeled them virgins. And then I guess I knew why, because they were with the men who were trying to knock down Lot's door to gain access to the two men who were angels who were staying with Lot that night. That said, they all left with the angels, but Lot's wife, her heart was back there, so she looked back and became a pillar of salt. And his two daughters were already influenced by the filth that they saw in Sodom. So while he slept, or when they drunken him, or he was drunken, and they both slept with him and had two children, Ammon and who was the other one? Can't remember his name. Let's see. Well, I know it was Ammon and another Moab. Was it Moab? Yeah, I think it was Ammon and Moab, out of whom came those two nations that became, should I say, rivals or enemies later on with the children of Israel. Okay, after this now we find Sarai maybe thinking, hey, you know what, the Lord is taking way too long to bring to pass this child that he's promised. So I'm going to give my maid Hagar, an Egyptian, to my husband Abram. And that is what happened. And Hagar became pregnant and maybe a little high-minded after, which of course angered Sarai. And the son's name was Ishmael. So she complained to Abram, who sent away Hagar and Ishmael eventually. Before that, though, she was just pregnant when she first had to leave, but then God told her to go back and, yield to Sarai, which she did. And then later, when she had the child, that's when Sarai got pregnant. I think when Ishmael was about 13. It's a long time waiting, but I don't know. Excuse me. Abraham was 99 years old. That's when God told him that he would make of him a great nation, and he should circumcise himself and his children. So he circumcised all the men in his household, including Ishmael and himself. I think it was after this that God told them again that they would have the child, and they showed it. They had the son, but during some sort of celebration for for this child's name was Isaac, and while they were celebrating, I'm not sure if it's a birthday or whatever it was, Ishmael was there seen mocking. Sarai was not happy with that, and they were told they had to leave. Okay, so they leave, and I don't think Abram was too happy with that, but God told him, hearken unto the voice of his wife. God changed both of them names from Abram to Abraham, and from Sarai to Sarah. So now Abram is going to be tested by God. God tells him, you know what? I want you to sacrifice your son and take him up to a certain place to be sacrificed. I don't think he told Sarai that, because I know I was going to go nuts. But anyway, he did it, and they went, and God stopped him just before he did so, and provided a ram for him to sacrifice instead. I don't think he went back to where Sarah was, but later on she died, and he did go to bury her. And he also asked his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac, and the servant went out. He asked God's guidance, and lo and behold, Rebecca came into the picture, and it was agreed with Rebecca's family to go on with him, with the servant. And when she saw Isaac, I think, yes, the deal was sealed, and she became his wife. And then she and Isaac had two sons, Esau and Jacob, and rivalry with the two of them. Esau was the oldest, but I believe that God did have Jacob as the one who would carry on the covenant or the promise with him. Esau was more of a hunter, and he liked to make nice meat, stewed meat, I guess. But he came in one day and was very hungry, and Jacob, I guess, was cooking some lentils that smell really good. If you ever cook lentils, they smell good. And they kind of made a bargain, and Jacob got the birthright. I'm thinking it's the right to be called the firstborn. And that's how it went on. And then later on, when God is promising to Isaac wants to bless his firstborn Esau, the mother, Rebecca, overhears and decides she's going to set up Jacob to get the blessing, which she did. And the father was deceived. And then when Esau came in and found out, he was not happy, so he wanted to kill Jacob. So they had Jacob go away from that Canaan place and go find a wife by Rebecca's family. He ends up there, and Laban, who is Rebecca's brother, has a daughter, Rachel, and he sees Rachel first. He likes Rachel. He decides, Laban agrees, he's not just going to work for him. He's going to pay Jacob to work for him. So he says, okay, he likes Rachel, he worked for her. So they make an agreement, 7 years. But on the wedding night, Laban deceives Jacob by giving him the elder sister Leah instead of Rachel. So now he has to work another 7 years in order to get Leah, which he does. And then they have some riffraff about the settlement of payment for Jacob, because now he wants to move on. He has a big family. The servants, maid servants have been given him to have children. Now he has, I believe he had 10 children by the time he was leaving. He was leaving Laban's house. And, well, skipping right along, he does leave and meets up with his brother Esau. He has sent gifts before him for Esau, but Esau came to meet him still and told him, you know what, all is forgiven. I am not going to hold anything against you. God has blessed me with enough. You know, I'm sure he got the inheritance from his father anyway, because Jacob left. And now that things have settled between them, he decides he's going to go on and stay with his family. And yep, he's going to pitch tent elsewhere outside of where his family is. So he is now on his own, and he has the 12 sons, which are the 12 tribes of Israel. Now Rachel has 2 of those 2 sons after the 10 from Leah and the handmaidens. So I'm going to name the 10 sons that he had with Leah and the other handmaids. He had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, who else? Okay, I'm going to get all 12 because I think I only had those 4 from Leah. That's when Leah first had her children. So I need to get all 12 of them. So I only have those 4. But anyway, so now he has 10 from Leah and her handmaid and Rachel's handmaid, and 2 he will have from Rachel. But the thing is, after he had the 2 from Rachel, Rachel died on the second one. And because of that, so let me see. I know I may be running and leaving out some things, but let me see. Okay, yeah. So before he has the second one, I think she died even before they got to Canaan, because Jacob was heading back to his father's place. And let's see. I'm just trying to grab everything as I see it along the way. On their way to Canaan, what happens is that Jacob had a daughter by Leah, and her name was Dinah. And like young people, they got to this certain town. She walks out to see what's going on in the place. And this young man sees her, Shechem, and I guess he was the son of a king, Hamor. And they were Hivites. And he lay with her, then wanted to marry her, and should have done the other way. But I don't think the brothers were happy with that. Of course, Jacob was not either, and they kind of set them up, the brothers that is, mostly Simeon and Levi, I think. And they had them circumcised in order to make that pact with them. But while they were in that down stage after circumcision, they went in and slay all of the men, all the Hivite men. Ooh. And of course, the people around were not going to be happy with that, nor the people who were not slaves. But anyway, they made some bad moves there, and Jacob and they left and moved on. And God told him, you know what, it's going to be okay. I'm still with you, and you will still be a great nation. So they kept on going, and by now, I think, yes, Rachel had her son, Benjamin, and that's when she died, when Benjamin was born. So now there are, let's see, you have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. I believe that's 12. Okay, he has 12 sons now. And what happens is that he loves Joseph more because Rachel died. That was his favorite wife. And she only had 2 sons, which was Joseph and Benjamin. And so he gave Joseph this lovely coat, beautiful colors. I guess that meant something special. And the other brothers, of course, looking on are like, yeah, right. You know what? I don't like this. And then one day they go out in the fields because they are herdsmen, shepherds. And he sends Joseph. Before that, Joseph had this dream. 12 stars bowing down to moon and stars bowing down to him, to 12 to him. 11 stars bowing to one, and 11 sheaves bowing to one sheaf. So the father kind of saying, you think we're going to be bowing to you? And of course the brothers have the same idea. Oh, you think somebody's going to be worshiping you? Yeah? Okay. Well, that increased the hatred even more. So now Jacob sends Joseph to look for his brethren. And they see him coming and say, you know what? We're going to set him up. We're going to kill him because we don't like him. He thinks he's all great and mighty and our father is just pampering him. Okay, we're going to deal with him. But one of them, I think it was Reuben, who first pleaded, no, let's not do that. Let's throw him in the pit over there. And while he was in the pit, I think it was it Judah, some one of them that said, you know, I think we should maybe just sell him. Instead of us killing him, let's sell him. There's some merchants coming, let's sell him to them and whatever. So that's what they do, but they take off his coat before they sell him. And they kill a goat, dip it in blood, and that will be the evidence that he was killed or died. So they sell him to these merchants, I think they were Ishmaelites passing, and they took him to Egypt, and he got into the house of Pharaoh. Now, of course, they go back with the bloody coat, tells Jacob, oh, he hollers, he mourns, he's sad, of course. His favorite son is dead. Whew. So Joseph is not really dead. He's in Egypt in some officer's house called Potiphar. Good guy. He is a good worker, smart, good thinker, good planner, organizer. So he's in charge of everything Potiphar has. There comes the wife. She finds maybe he's attractive. He's a slave. He should succumb to her. She sets it up that he's alone with her in the house, tries to get him to be with her. He says, no, I'm not doing this. This is sinning against God. He takes off. She grabs his coat, holds on to it, starts screaming and saying, oh, he came in to attack her. And of course, Potiphar, to keep his dignity, puts Joseph into prison. And there he is. While he's there, again, he finds favor with the God of the prison because he's a good worker. And he is loyal to God, and God allows him to be seen for his morals and his integrity. And God puts him in charge of all the prisoners. And then two of the Pharaoh's workers, a baker and a butler, got thrown into prison for whatever reason. And they have dreams. So Joseph interprets the dreams of both of them, and they come to pass. He told them, remember me when you get out. Neither remembered him, but of course one met his death, so he was not there to remember. But I think the butler, later on, when Pharaoh had a dream he could not interpret, neither could his fraudulent wise men interpret the dream. Then he remembers Joseph, and he says, you know what, there was a guy in prison who was able to interpret my dream, so maybe he could interpret yours. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph, takes him out of prison, cleans him up, and lo and behold, Joseph tells him exactly what the dreams mean. And they were meant, I think Pharaoh dreamed 7 fat cows, 7 lean cows, lean eating up the fat. 7 stalks of corn, and the lean ones eating up the fat ones. So Joseph says, you're going to have 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. So then Pharaoh says, okay, so how am I going to deal with this now that I know what's going to happen? So he says, Joseph, let me put someone in charge. You're a smart guy. You could interpret dreams. You're going to be in charge of everything in Egypt. So you deal with it accordingly. So Joseph makes bonds. I'm sure, like I always say, I'm sure some of those pyramids back there in Egypt and some of those structures may have been storehouses for all the grain for the 7 years of famine. Who knows? So he does that, and he stores up for Egypt and for all the surrounding areas. And during the famine, here comes his brothers to buy food, because it's not just in Egypt, it's all around surrounding areas. So they came from Canaan to buy food. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him, because in their minds, he's dead. So Joseph is able to kind of put them through a test. So he puts back their money into the bags of grain that they bought. So when they get back, And I think he also keeps Simeon. He accuses them of being spies. He knew they weren't spies, but just to test them. And he puts them all in prison for 3 days and then takes them out and says, okay, until you bring that younger brother you said you have back, then he will stay. Simeon, I'm keeping him. So all the rest go back. They tell their father. The father is like wanting to die because no way I'm sending Benjamin. You all already gave me bad news about Joseph. Now you want me to send Benjamin so that what is going to happen? You're going to send me to my grave. So they didn't go back for a while until things got really bad in Canaan. And he said, you know what? Y'all got to go get some food. So they eventually leave and go back. And Joseph puts them through a test again. This time he puts his favorite cup in Benjamin's sack. And because of that, he's accused of theft. And now all the brothers, especially Judah, because I think it was Reuben or Judah. Let's see. I think it was, who was it? Fill the men's sack. Yes, but the youngest one. Okay. Well, one of the brothers, I think it was either Judah or Reuben, made a surety. Yes. Judah was the one that said, you know what? Reuben told the dad, hey, if I don't come back with Benjamin, you keep my 2 sons. But then when the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, Judah stood up and said, take me. Don't try to take him because it will just kill my father. So they tried to talk their way out, and during so, Joseph couldn't take it anymore. So he had to confess, hey, it's me. I know it's you. And this is what happened, etc., etc. So he inquired about his father. Pharaoh, everybody heard because they were making so much noise. So Pharaoh gave them some asses and different things to go get their whole family out of Canaan, because there was still 5 years of famine to be had. So they needed to come out of Canaan, come to Egypt, and that's what they did. They were welcomed. They abided in a place called Goshen, because most likely it was a place that they could feed their cattle, etc. And there they lived with Jacob, their father. Jacob came at 130. He stayed for 17 years in Egypt before he died. And before he did, he made them promise not to bury him in Egypt. So when he died, 17 years later, he was 147 years old. Joseph had them embalm him. This is so historical, and I love history, and I've taught history. I've taught about embalming. I wish I could have done it from a biblical perspective. But anyway, this is so true to history. And he had his father embalmed. They mourned for him for 40 days, and then they took him back to Canaan, where Abraham had bought that plot of land to bury Sarah years ago. And that is exactly where he was buried. So now Joseph has assured his brothers, because they got a little scared after their dad Jacob died, like, oh, what's going to happen to us? So he assured them, hey, you know what? It's fine. I have forgiven you. What the devil had planned to be evil against me, you all thought you would do me evil, but God had something good in mind, and this is how it worked out. So Joseph himself lived until 110 years, and he told them, when you are leaving Egypt, take my bones with you. Do not leave me buried in Egypt. And that was the end of Genesis 50 and the book of Genesis. Wow. Quite a lot happened. And I know I didn't touch every single thing, but the main things are what I wanted to touch. So this is it for today's recap. It's not so much of a read, it was a recap of Genesis, the book of Genesis. And until our next reading, which I will decide which way I'm going to go with it, but it will be another day for a chapter a day. Until then, faith comes by hearing, and that is hearing of God's word. So until the next reading, you all have a great day.